Hi, it's time for another verb of the day. Today's verb is smile. Let's take a moment and review the definitions or the ways that we use this verb. The most common way you will hear and see the verb smile used means to turn up the corner of one's mouth to form an expression, right? So this action. And generally, when we're forming this sort of appearance, it's to indicate that we are pleased, maybe amused. We might do that when something is funny or entertaining. Many times it's also interpreted to be a kind expression. Now, a second way you might hear or see the verb smile used is to mean to express a particular feeling by smiling. Sometimes, as I read literature or stories, I see phrases like a particular character smiled her agreement or her approval. So, kind of indicating that they approved or agreed to something by making that particular facial expression. For now, you should know that smile is a regular verb. To make the progressive form of this verb, you should drop the E before adding ing. And that's because this verb ends with a vowel consonant E pattern. Okay? When we drop the E and add the suffix, that forms smiling. The past tense and participle forms of this verb can be made by just adding D, since this verb already ends in an E. Now our base verb, smile, ends with an L sound. And L consonant sounds are voiced sounds. This means that when I add the ed ending, I'm just going to make a D sound, and I'm not going to add an extra syllable to the verb. So it should sound like this: smiled, smiled. Okay. Now, there are a couple phrasal verbs that we can discuss. The first phrasal verb you might encounter is to smile at. And the first way that this phrasal verb gets used is sort of what it sounds like. It's quite literal. So you look at someone, right, and you turn those corners of your mouth up. An example of this might be, the clerk always smiles at customers, right? So many people who work in retail environments, they're taught or trained how to do this to appear to be very welcoming and kind and friendly. Now, a second way smile at gets used is going to sound very different. The meaning here is quite different. It has something to do with good luck or good fortune. So generally means that someone or something, maybe a higher power, has given or bestowed good fortune or happiness upon a person or maybe even a group of people. An example of this might be, life has really smiled at that family. Okay? It's really another way of saying they've had a lot of good luck, a lot of good fortune. Many times with this second way, you will hear things like fate. You might hear people reference God or, again, some sort of higher power. The last phrasal verb we'll discuss today is to smile on or smile upon. Again, this can mean to regard someone or something in a favorable or positive way. Sometimes when it gets used, it also has that meaning of having some good luck or good fortune attached to it. An example of this, the weather smiled on us during our vacation. This is really just another way of saying we were really lucky and had some great weather, right? We didn't have to deal with storms or rain or extremely hot temperatures, whatever you perceive as being not so great. Now, let's move on and continue using our verb of the day in a couple different verb tenses. Today, we'll practice the present progressive and the simple future. Let's start with the present progressive. We use this verb tense to talk about actions that are happening now. We also use it to describe actions that are in progress during a time period that has not been completed. Some teachers or textbooks and even other YouTube videos call this the present continuous, and that's just fine. It means exactly the same thing. The reason I like saying present progressive is you can see two letter P's in the name of that verb tense, and I want you to remember that means you're going to need two parts to make your verb. So in this verb tense, we need to pay attention to our subject. So our structure will be to have our subject, then we're going to have a form of be, and then our verb that ends in ing. This means when our subject is I, we use am and then the verb with ing. But if the subject is you, we, or they, we use are, A-R-E, and then the ing for the verb. And finally, if our subject is he, she, or it, we use is, and then the ing form the verb. Let's take a look at an example. The baby is smiling while sleeping. Okay. So here you can imagine we're maybe describing something right now, right? We're looking at, oh, so cute, right? You see a baby with the corners of his or her mouth turned up as they take a little nap. Now, if you want to make a negative present progressive sentences, again, we always start with our subject. We use the form of be that matches. Then we add not before the verb with ing. You can see that in my example here. The principal isn't smiling right now, right? So kind of the opposite, be kind of a serious look, not so friendly. Maybe some people have gotten into a little bit of trouble. And in case that word principal is new for you, many times we use it to talk about the leader of an individual school. Sometimes it might help to think this is the teacher's boss, the teacher's supervisor. Finally, let's talk about making a yes or no question in the present progressive. To do this, we start with the form of be, then we have our subject, and then the verb with the ing form. You can see that in an example. Are you smiling at me? Right? So here we might be asking about something happening right now. Now let's move on and talk about and make some sentences in the simple future. Today we're going to make sentences with will. Will is very common as people make predictions about something, or I should say an action that will happen in the future. Right? We also see it with promises and offers. You might see it with plans when those plans are a little less certain, or one is a little less sure. But the nice thing about making sentences in the simple future is that our structure is going to stay the same no matter what our subject is. So in the affirmative, we start with a subject, we use will, and then the base verb. You can see that in my example. You will smile after reading this news story. Okay? This might be an example of a prediction, what I think is going to happen, right? So maybe this story is rather sweet, it's rather kind, right? It's going to cause you to form that facial expression. Now let's talk about making negative sentences in the simple future. Again, we follow the same pattern no matter what our subject is. We start with a subject, right? We use will, not, and then the base verb. Sometimes my students tell me the contraction will not is a little difficult to remember. We pronounce it won't with a long O. That's W-O-N apostrophe T. An example of this in a sentence might be, their kids won't smile for photos. Right? Again, this might be another prediction based on the past. They haven't smiled, and now I'm saying into the future, they're just not going to do it. Some people sort of refuse, even if you encourage them or try and make them laugh. Finally, let's look at making a yes or no question in the simple future. To do this, start with will, then use your subject, and then the base verb. Here's my last example. Will the defendant smile while in court? Right? There might be certain times where it's thought to not be so appropriate, or another way to say it, it is inappropriate to look happy. An example of being in court and being accused of a crime might be a very serious thing, where they want you to be respectful and not look like you're having a great time. Now let's move on and talk about some words and a phrase related to our verb smile. And the first word we're going to discuss today is just the noun form of this word. The noun smile, you'll notice, has exactly the same pronunciation. It also has exactly the same spelling. When I use this word as a noun, I'm talking about that pleased, kind, or amused facial expression, again, where the corners of your mouth are sort of turned up. Many times as people do this, you notice that their teeth are exposed, or you are able to see their teeth. You don't have to expose your teeth to smile, right? Sometimes you'll hear that called a closed lip smile, kind of a like that. But for many people, they do show their teeth while smiling. So an example of the word smile as a noun in a sentence might be, you have a beautiful smile. Another related word you might encounter is the adjective smiley. This is generally describing someone or something that is smiling and or possibly cheerful. An example of this, the smiley children are so excited for the party. So smiley, the adjective, is describing the noun children, right? So you can imagine the children are excited for this event, they're cheerful, and they're smiling. Now, something else you might encounter is a smiley face, which is a noun, but sometimes that smiley face gets shortened just into smiley, right? So smiley can be used as a noun. It's talking about a line drawing, right? Where someone has likely kind of drawn a circle to represent a face, maybe two eyes, and then they make that idea of a mouth turned up. An example of this might be, they always put smiley faces in their emails and texts. Okay. Again, we could say in this sentence, they always put smileys in their emails and texts. And now many people have gone away from kind of the drawings, right? And in a technological form, they're using something called emojis or emoticons. That might be a little more common, but they all connect back to this original noun. One last phrase for us to discuss today. Maybe you've heard somebody described as smiling ear to ear. The idea is that this is a very big smile, a wide smile, usually indicating a high level or a high degree of happiness and joy. An example of this, he's been smiling ear to ear since he was offered the promotion. Right? I'd imagine this is happy news. This individual is moving up in an organization, probably going to make some more money, right? And so he's smiling in sort of a wide or big way. Thank you so much for watching today's video. I hope you have a great day.